I'm here with Jed Shepherd, writer of Host and Dashcam, producer, Blumhouse. The list goes on. I've gone right back through your kind of catalogue, and
Uh-oh.
what what I found really interesting was the kind of the collaborators and the return collaborators from all the way from Dawn of the Deaf right through to Dashcam and beyond.
Yeah.
I could go through the list of people: James Swanson, Rob Savage, Gemma Hurley. How did that group develop? I imagine naturally, organically, but how did that group kind of keep working with each other?
So I guess the first person out of all this entire group I met was Rob Savage. Um, I when I first joined Twitter, I don't know if you remember when Twitter
Mm-hmm.
first happened, but you're just looking out for people who are into the same stuff as you, especially like in
Yes.
the UK. And actually, I remember back in the early days, you could actually hyper focus it so you're only seeing people in your own area. I think that's right. You
Mm.
can see people talking like almost in like a five square radius, and I think my thing was set up for that. So most of the things I was getting was from people who were in London, and just up popped a tweet. I think it got like literally two likes and one retweet. It was from a guy called Rob Savage. He'd submitted a 30-second or a 1 minute comedy short to something, and he just posted it online. And it had been online for like, I don't know how it appeared on my timeline, but it's been up for a couple of days. And yeah, it didn't have much traction. And I saw that and I was like, this comedy short's like really cool. And I always think comedy and horror are very close to each other because it's all about
Yes.
timing. And so I just do what I always do with everything. I just reached out to him and was like, hey man, really good short. And I was like, have you ever thought about doing horror? And he was like, actually, horror's my passion. I was like, cool. Well, it seems like we're in the same area. Let's hang out. So
Wow.
we met up and we in the very, very, very first meeting. In fact, it might have even been the first sentence I ever said to him was just like, "Hey, I've got this idea for a film called Dawn of the Deaf," which we ultimately went on to make a couple of years later. But basically, just finding my first actual collaborator, someone who understands my references, understands like everything I'm into, was really empowering, and same for Rob. And because he hadn't really done much like horror stuff and he really wanted to get into horror, so like us finding each other I think was really, really important in the genesis of everything that came after. And the very, 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 very first thing we did, um that anyone's seen at least, was a short called Absence. We made it for £300, um, of my money, I will say £300, and
It's not been paid back.
I've not received that money back yet. No, but £300 of my money equals about 30 grand of people's time and the effort,
Mm.
and it would be impossible to get that team back together now, really. Um, but all the people who worked in that, the crew, like the costume person, the VFX person, the producer, Rob. Those are the people from that very, very first short that we've worked on for everything. Like, when people say, "Hey, work on this little short with me," I promise you, if I ever make it big or ever make a feature, I'll take you with me. And no
And
one
they don't,
ever like
yeah, they
actually
don't do that.
follows
Yeah.
through, but we do. And like,
Yeah.
it's very important to make sure that we took everyone with us. So we've, as much as we physically can, we take as many people who've helped us along the years with us on every project. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to like do what we're doing now, because they helped us right at the start when we didn't have any money or resources.
And it's a mutually beneficial thing, isn't it? Because obviously, from an outside perspective, who just knows the names and the things that these people have been attached to, so talented, so inspiring each other, giving each other ideas, you must feel like you say you've made it happen through reaching out and talking and communicating and connecting with people. But actually, you know, it's just the sort of the fate of the gods how talented those people actually end up being, and they all are really super
Yeah.
talented people.
Well, I think
Including
we
yourself,
are.
obviously.
Thank you, man. I think it is, part of it is like fate and luck, but part of it is, I think, you you know who's good. Like when you work with someone once, you know who's good.
Mm.
And I guess some of the people who really like didn't show themselves up to be uh as good as the others, like maybe they didn't come onto the next project.
Yeah.
But I think that the most fun thing is just to make stuff with your mates.
It kind of goes into my next question, really. Host. The third time watching it, I got a kind of strange kind of lockdown COVID nostalgia, which I wasn't expecting to feel. So, did you know that you were capturing a moment, and were you actually seeing it as an opportunity to sort of document what was happening? What was the thought behind that?
You may know like some of the story, but like we had no plans to make this going into COVID. It was only because we were bored. Rob did this. He called me up one day and said he wants to prank our friends on Zoom, and he showed me what he wanted to do, which was to uh, pretend that he fell off a ladder and died, or live on Zoom, because something jumped out of the attic at him. And so he showed me it, and I was like, "That's not going to work. This is terrible. No one's going to believe it." But of course, like everyone believed it, and we luckily I recorded it actually, and I think it was at the last minute. I was just like, "Rob, shall I record this?" He was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." So I recorded it on Zoom, and then sent him the footage, and he edited it together into a 2 minute prank video, posted it online, and like within a couple of days, it got 18 million views, and we were like,
Wow.
"Wow, this is crazy! What was going on?" And then we got all these offers from everywhere, but to make it into something bigger. Um, but we didn't have a film. And then Rob called me because don't forget, we weren't allowed to be anywhere near each other. So he called me. He was like, "Okay, everyone's wants something. Do you have any ideas?" And I'm just like, "I no. Like, what is this? What's going on?" And but then at 4:30 in the morning that night, because I was thinking about it all day and all night. I hadn't gone to sleep yet. About 4:30, it just came to me, and I messaged him Zoom seance. Literally those two words, just
Wow.
Zoom seance. And then I went to sleep, and like I woke up like about 5 hours later, and Rob was going crazy for it. He was like, "Yeah." So
He's on it.
that's what was pitched around, and Shudder were the only ones who. I mean, a lot of people wanted it, to be quite honest, but
Mm.
Shudder were the only ones who were like, "Yeah, we'll give you the money to make it within the lockdown," because everyone else was like, "Yeah, we'll give you the money after the
Yeah.
lockdown. You can make this into a big film." But we were like, "No, we want to do it now. We want to do it before we're allowed outside."
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
Because you get people like me then watching at home who were kind of I can't remember one wave of the of the whole
yeah,
thing and going like, oh, this feels so real. This feels right now. So yeah, you want to capture
that's what
that.
it was.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah.
I think what you were saying, like we didn't expect anything out of it. We were just making it with literally our friends. You've obviously seen a whole bunch of those people in previous things we've done. It's
Hmm.
just a WhatsApp group we had called the Quarantine Movie Club, which we were just using to like plan movie
Wow.
watches together. And then we just every single person from behind the camera and in front of the camera is in that WhatsApp group. Everyone.
Right.
So it's yeah, we just use our friends, and that's what happens.
That's so amazing. I love that. That's just kind of because I'd imagine most people can identify with that to a certain degree, whether they were doing quizzes at home. It's lovely to think it just happens so naturally, just because it just sparks off in that direction. And I think the
Yeah.
limitations. That's what I was going to ask you next. When I used to teach writing, we used to do these writing exercises called Aleppo, where you have to
Mm.
leave out certain things or put certain things in or use this many adjectives. And the students would come up with these amazing pieces of writing written to the
Hmm.
limitation. So I was thinking the small spaces, the economy of effects, Zoom.
Hmm.
When you were writing, did that help you shape the story, what you couldn't do more than what you could do?
No, I think you're right. The limitations, which were obviously they were limitations by law, really. Like we weren't
Mm,
allowed to do certain things, even if we wanted to. So we
yes.
knew we couldn't be in anyone's house. We knew we anything we do, the cast would have to do themselves, would have to set things up themselves. They'd have to do their own makeup. They'd have to be their own cinematographers. They'd have to do their own sound. They'd have to upload, that be their own DIT, send us the footage and the sound later on that day. So yeah, we were very limited to that, and also we had the time was ticking. We had 12 weeks from the time I said Zoom seance to the day we decided it was going to be released on Shudder, which was the day before Boris said the door that we could leave our houses.
So a lot of
Um,
pressure as well then
yeah,
to get
exactly.
it done.
And you could only really do this with a friendship group who's up for doing it. And like,
Hmm.
me and Rob and our producer Doug, we've built like an amazing team over the years. So they were all up for doing stuff. But it's funny because we didn't know what host would become, and the whole time we were doing it, I don't think anyone thought or knew what it would be. And we were still watching films every evening. Like after they would film for the day, we would just jump on it and watch a film and talk about the films and stuff. And then we would have like quizzes. We were doing quizzes all the time and playing games like online with each other. We really got into Mario Kart the whole time.
So you're just
Um,
getting, like everybody else, just getting through what was
yeah,
happening, kind of, yeah, an element of entertaining yourselves, and but also, I guess that's the way we help each other with our mental health, isn't it? Just by
mhm,
being present and kind of making each other laugh and goofing around.
yeah,
And the byproduct of that is an amazing movie, which I feel like it's one of those movies that people will return to, especially the further away we get from COVID.
yeah.
If that kind of makes sense as a little time capsule.
It does because like I mean, obviously we thought, okay, maybe this will just work within the quarantine. Maybe it's not going to work outside, but I think as time goes on, more and more people love it and discover it, and it's every list that comes out of like best horror movies, best British horror movies,
Mm.
scariest movie, we're always at the top or there or thereabouts, and
Yeah, that's
but it
amazing.
just blows my mind because like just a massive horror fan, and I'm a horror film fan before I'm a filmmaker. I like
Yeah,
if I could not make another film again but still watch horror movies, I'd pick that. I'd always pick watching horror movies over making horror movies
yeah,
because I love horror movies. So just the fact we're up there with like The Shining and The Exorcist, and sometimes beating them, it just blows my mind. I'm just like,
yeah. It
I
must
don't
be amazing to
understand.
open a magazine and see your movie on there. Because
Oh, there was a time we were like 3 months running. We had features in Empire magazine, and that blows my mind as well.
yeah, being a kid and collecting them and having them in a binder like I used to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I
Oh
don't
yeah.
watch a lot of modern horror, so
Hmm.
to have kind of come across Host did kind of open up my sort of willingness to watch more modern films. So then I watched Saint Maud and a few others, and I was just
Oh,
like,
great film. Have you
wow,
seen
yeah,
Spencer?
yes, yeah. I
Another
saw,
great British horror film. After Host, me and Rob, we just wanted to do something was completely different.
yeah,
Host is like universally loved, and it's like a gateway horror for a lot of people. When kids were watching it, it made our names, but we were just like, okay, horror's meant to be dangerous. Horror isn't meant to be safe.
yeah,
We wanted to do something different and dangerous, and so we had this idea for a long time. So I've known Annie for 10 years,
right,
maybe longer. And like like stayed with her. Like she was in a band called Giant Drag, and I was a fan of that band. And so I would talk about Annie to Rob a whole bunch of times, and I showed him a whole bunch of some videos that she made. She literally does really drive around LA doing that show where she raps and stuff. She really does it. I've been on her show as well, and I think it was 2017. I will, yeah, 2017. I just come back from Sundance. I stayed with Annie before Sundance and then after Sundance, and she was just doing what she calls band car, and I was beside her doing the beats, kind of like the character. It's kind
right.
of in sorry, the it's called Stretch in
Stretch, yeah, yeah,
Dashcam, but his real name's Amma. Um, I was kind of like that character. So I was like, Annie, this is really cool. This would be a really cool film. I don't know what kind of film, but obviously a horror film. So as soon as I came back from LA, I said to Rob, we should make this into a movie. And we played around with that idea a lot. That he was like, okay, what kind of movie? I was like, what if she is like an Uber driver or something, and her passenger is possessed. That's kind of all we had.
yeah.
And then and then we built it out a little bit more. And before Host came out, we'd pitched that around. I think we even pitched it to Blumhouse, and they said no. But obviously after Host, things changed. People's minds changed. People were just
Yeah,
like, okay, let's just give these guys whatever they want.
yeah, they know what they're
Um,
doing.
yeah, so I don't think that movie would have been made if it wasn't for Host.
Next question really was you have this role where you mentioned Blumhouse and executive producing and writing. Are you able to kind of reflect on that success? Is there a part of the role or the roles that you have that you enjoy the most?
Doing Blumhouse stuff is obviously great.
Mhm.
Um, but I actually still don't think I've achieved anything. I really don't, because like we in the UK, it's just really hard. There's not too many people that I can look to for you know advice or the path to take. But
Mhm.
like my aspirations are like much higher. There's so much stuff I want to do. One of the things I want to do is rebuild horror in the UK, because we were the kings of it in the 60s and the
Yeah,
70s, and then we let the rest of the world catch up to us.
I love Amicus, all the Amicus
Love
anthologies.
Amicus. Yeah.
And they're a good way of kind of being quite economic with the budget, breaking stories
Casting.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, and Hammer, like you say, led the world, and you've got all these amazing things. So that, yeah, I'm sure, this will be something that I'll be able to reflect back on this interview and go, yeah, we did it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just wait a couple of months. There's an announcement coming in a couple of months, and that is it's going to be quite a big achievement for me. So yeah, so maybe at that point when that's announced, I'll think, oh, okay, cool. I've done something bigger than anything I've done so far. And one of the most exciting things to do is helping other British filmmakers get to a stage where they can make stuff. So I'm in the UK currently. I'm one of the people that production companies, studios go to when they want help with horror films now, which is it's a really cool position to be in, because I can kind
Hmm.
of shape what British horror becomes over the next few years. And in my mind, the big mistake that we've been making, and for the last 30 years, is we keep making arty horror movies. When we get to make horror movies, they're just arty, they're not commercial. So
Hmm.
nobody sees it. It doesn't make a profit. It's not reinvested back into the British film industry. Um, so my whole thing is, let's make commercial movies. You don't have to make expensive commercial movies, but let's make movies other countries want to see. Let's make movies that
Yes.
Americans want to see, because then we'll, get some money back into the system so we can make more and more and more movies. And when we were the kings of horror back in the Hammer and Amicus days, you know, people people were crawling over broken glass to get to us. We just need to really think about the horror that we're making, make sure the horror isn't so niche. We can we have amazing history. We have thousands of years of history compared to modern history. I mean, compared to
Hmm.
hundreds of years of history in America, but they are making these classic horror movies. We could do better. So that's a good example, because if you look at Men and you look at like things like Kill List, we can do folk horror really good. But if you look at the
Hmm.
folk horror that the Americans are making, look what Ari Aster did with Hereditary. That's
Yes.
essentially a folk horror, but he
Yeah.
managed to do it in a commercial way, big set pieces, big
Hmm.
ending. Here we just don't do that. We need to have these like big horror set pieces in order to get it around the world. We've been really brainwashed into thinking this is the type of movie we should make, and I blame the BFI for a lot of that, because they only fund dramas, heightened dramas. They're very
Hmm.
scared to put their hand in the pocket and fund horror movies.
I said, with going back to Host, I think for me watching it a third time, I was kind of smiling more and kind of going, "Oh yeah, it was like that. That did happen. That's just like it was." And because you automatically go back to what you were doing before.
Yeah,
We kind of all just drifted back, but it was a really strange period of time where very odd things were happening on a daily basis. And then it
totally.
just
Yeah,
stopped. It stopped, and everyone's like, "Oh, we're not going to talk about that anymore. We're not going to deal with it in this way anymore. We're just going to go back to try and remember exactly what we did before and do that," which is really
yeah.
mad, really mad.
And we did do things like we would all just jump on Zoom and just all drink on Zoom as if
Yeah,
we're in a pub or something. I
yes,
find that weird.
yeah. The amount of
Um,
gin that I drank, and I'd never drank gin before lockdown, and I was just
Oh, really?
guzzling gin and watching movies with people, and
I love
just
it.
nodding off.
Yeah, if it
Where
wasn't
did that
for the
come from?
fact, yeah, if it wasn't for the fact like COVID, just these shared times that we have with each other would have been like really special. But obviously, there's bad stuff surrounding it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
we're
yeah.
dying
That's
all over the
it.
world.
It's horrific.
Yeah,
But then again, like you say, there is that kind of comedy is kind of horror's kind of opposite side, isn't it? It's like the two face of the smiling, laughing face theatre. There is humour in there. There's humour in Host, isn't there? How important was
it's
it for
funny.
you to get the, especially when the sneeze? I know that was improvised. Can you improvise a sneeze? But it just happens, doesn't it? But yeah, things like that just really tickle me. I think you need that a little bit of awareness. Is it something? Is that your domain? Do you have to get those moments in there? You don't want to
Yeah.
take it too seriously or take yourself too seriously, maybe?
Well, just with found footage, you need to, you have a story that you want to tell, but you have to let the actors kind of feel real and be authentic. And because we're all friends as well, it
Mm.
meant, they were just doing things. The group dynamic is almost true to life. Maybe a couple of people, their dynamic is swapped around a little bit, but like they are just doing what they would normally do on a Zoom call. And I Zoom with these ladies all the time, so it's that's the group dynamic. So just seeing these things naturally happen, letting them like kind of do what they want as long as they get to from point A to point B, means that you do get like happy accidents like sneezes, and you find with the found footage film, at least you find it in the editing, like
Mm.
because they just shot so much stuff. It's in the edit, like you kind of find the actual film, and Rob and the producer Doug, working with Brenna Rangot, our editor, found the film out of all of the footage that we had. But I personally think if even one of those cast members were different, it would have been a completely different
Yeah,
film, and it
yeah,
might not have worked. But that group dynamic, having
yeah.
because like we got Radina, Caroline, and Gemma, they were all in Dawn of the Deaf, and we got them from Central School of Speech and Drama in like 2015,
Right.
16, and we cast them for that. So then we became friends ever since. Uh, Gemma and Gemma and Emma, they were both together in a short that I did. But they all kind of knew each other just through me and Rob and the group. Um, so
Yeah.
if one of those pieces weren't there, it may be completely different. We might not even be talking right now.
Yeah, from a viewer's point of view, that kind of the relationships, and when somebody's angry at someone and goes, no, it's fine, there's a certain way of saying no, it's fine, where it's not fine, and they're really
Yeah,
pissed off. That is perfectly observed in there, and I think you have to know that person. You have to have some sort of relationship with them to be able to do that,
yeah,
because that's that kind of moment where you are, whether it's in the halls of residence or a house share, or if you're trying to get on, but that person is getting on your last nerve because they always do this thing this thing that you
yeah.
hate.
That's
You be
shown a couple of times actually with
Yeah.
with obviously Gemma and Haley, just
Yes.
this unspoken kind of anger with each other, and then you also get it with Radina and Alan, her boyfriend, just in the
Mm,
house, these looks and this just like
yeah.
sense of frustration.
The defenses go up a little bit. You go into your
Yeah,
little clique, you have a little chat about them. Do we like them, kind of thing.
exactly. And
It,
then we use, that's her real boyfriend. Um,
wow.
and we even Teddy and Ginny, they were together as well.
Right.
Um, so we just use the real relationships and just that's what we had.
Yeah, and it does it works. It reflects, because I think the hardest thing sometimes with things like that is that it feels like it's being read directly off the page for the first time. It doesn't kind of
That's the death of found footage. If you're just reading, if someone writes a script and just expects their actors just to say word for word in a found footage film, it's
mm,
it's the death of it. It doesn't feel natural. It feels like a guy has written the script for six ladies, which is never a good thing.
Yeah, and that's it. The voices are very authentic. So much so that, like, I think with the Teddy character's interesting because, you know, he's that male friend in a group of a female friendship group, but
Hmm.
it totally makes sense that he's in there. He is that kind of guy. You couldn't write a Teddy character, I don't
Yeah,
think, word for word and get it as pitch perfect as the way he
and
works with
that's Teddy.
that dynamic.
That is Teddy, and like the reason why there's a puppet in it, I know it's creepy, but like he had a puppet in his house. That's
Right.
why there's a puppet in Host.
How
And it became like
weird.
very iconic. All those
Yeah.
things you see, they just had in their house. So we integrated everything.
Yeah, well, that's true because I think, like I say, with found footage and things like that, and you do get a big reaction from people if they don't like it in a big way. Like I remember watching Blair Witch Project in the cinema,
Mhm.
and people getting up and booing at the end. Have a real visceral reaction to it, like they were offended by the fact that this camera was moving around, and because it was so different.
Yeah.
And I can't remember many films or any film really, certainly not in the northwest of England. You don't tend to get many people at the end. They just get up and leave.
I think
Um,
Blair Witch was, it was a unique thing because the hype around it by the time it reached here was
mm,
palpable. It was crazy, and for a film to like be made for almost nothing and to make like how much it made is insane. It's never been repeated. So, and for me, it's the best found footage film. It is the template that we use for a Host for sure, and I don't think it could ever be beaten. And I think it's one of the best horror films of all time. And I completely understand though why people don't like it. I can completely
mm,
understand that because it's unconventional, it's shaky, it makes you sick. But there's something so authentic about it and just beautiful about it. And the fact that it was the first one that people are aware of. Obviously, there was a whole bunch of found footage films
yeah,
before Blair Witch Project, but this is the one where it's why we call it found footage because, and I was speaking to Ed Sanchez about the director of the Blair Witch Project yesterday. Was it yesterday? No, Friday. I was speaking to him,
no way.
and I didn't even realize this, but we call this subgenre found footage because in the very start of the Blair Witch Project, in the title card, it said the footage was found. So that's why we
Ah,
call it found footage. I didn't even
right.
realize. Hmm.
I don't know how much you can talk about this, but people will probably beat me up if I don't mention it. On your IMDb, currently has untitled Sam Raimi projects.
So before Host, we signed a deal with Sam Raimi to do a film, and throughout lockdown, me and Rob were on Zoom all the time with Sam and his production company working on this film. So as well as doing Host, at the same time, me and Rob were working on this Raimi project. I am not 100% sure if that specific project is still going to happen,
Hmm,
but in the meantime, I've been doing stuff with Sam. So I don't know how much I can say, but I'm doing something later on this year that's coming out later on this year that Sam's been involved with. And
fantastic.
me and Sam are going to work on a whole bunch of things together as well. That's the plan.
That sounds like it's right in line with what we were discussing earlier on about that kind of revitalizing the British horror through essentially getting those American eyes on it.
Oh yeah, just you where the as a horror fan growing up, as a kid growing up, you have these icons. Like Sam Raimi's my favorite director. So the fact now like he's like genuinely literally my mentor. So it just blows
Wow.
my mind. And I've also getting to speak to like some of the other biggest horror directors of all time as well, speaking to them about potential projects and things. And there's one director who's directed what some people call the scariest movie of all time, not including Host, and I'm going to be working with him on something as well. Um, so yeah, like I'm really trying, but like it feels sometimes like really difficult doing it from the UK because no one's really helping me. I feel like I'm alone on an island, like just like shouting at clouds, trying to get people to like understand what I'm talking about. So I
Yeah.
have to go to America and get these like icons to like be on board with the stuff I'm doing in order to make the people who hold the purse strings over here to kind of get them to notice. I would say it would just make sense. You can make arty movies, but make them commercially minded. Get a
Yeah.
profit. make a profit. Movies that the public actually want to see. Just look at the box office. Go, cool. We'll make a movie like that. Let's make a horror movie. And then the money will go back into investing into more films. Then you can make your arty films that nobody watches but wins a BAFTA. If you look at the list of like films that have won BAFTAs and stuff, they're mostly movies that nobody's ever watched and nobody will watch. It's just for a group of rich, to be honest, white people who are making movies for their friends.
That was going to be my question. Really, is it kind of a snobbishness around horror then?
It's complete snobbery. In fact, I know people who have had horror films funded by the BFI, and then at the last minute they said, "Okay, yeah, before we send you this money, can you make it a non-horror? Can you just make it like a heightened drama instead?" And the money was pulled away because that wouldn't happen. Like, I can't stress enough how many amazing British filmmakers are out there. Like, last week I was just at a horror film festival, and I was judging the shorts with a bunch of cool people, and there were some amazing films in there. And if these people just got the opportunity and the investment, they would make all timers. But they'll odds are currently, like, those people might never get given this investment.
That's a really interesting sort of behind the curtain look at how hard, and I suppose it makes it even more admirable what you guys have managed to do despite those factors that we've just discussed.
It's all American money. That's the thing. Like, the Americans appreciate horror, so they're the ones who give us the money. It's not the UK. It's a real shame. It's actually devastating what's happened to our film industry.
Everybody who I know who loves horror really cares about the same things, and things like that. Sometimes I'll just opt out, and I don't know why I opt out, and then Host really got me back in there. And just want to say a big thank you for that. It's a bit like sometimes, like Dead Man's Shoes was an example of a film that made me realize, like, this is like essentially watching Scorsese De Niro. This is this is 100%. An incredible piece of work that I put up against anything. And that's a guy from the Midlands, working class background, with great ideas and a great group of friends who helped make it happen. And Host, I would say, gave me that same feeling and that same hope. So hopefully there's somebody listening to this, maybe 15, 16 years old or whatever, and they're just like, right, I'm going to start writing that script. I've got this great idea.
I'd love that to happen.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
No, thank you again for being so generous with your time. And yeah, just best of luck in everything that you do. And I'm really excited to hear about those things that were just kind of little teasers about the future. So yeah, that'd be great. And again, I might ask you to come on and just tell me what films to watch. That would be.
I'm up for it anytime, man. Anytime.
Oh, thank you so much.
Hey. Hi, guys.
Hey, guys.
Gina.
I've never done this over Zoom.
Nothing's gonna happen.
Visualize us sitting in a circle.
What was that?
Rob Savage, mainly short films before this, and this coming from a sort of prank played on his friends. It's weird, isn't it? It's like a bit of nostalgia for a couple of years ago. I'm already kind of like, oh yeah, I remember when we did that during lockdown. Not that I'm pining for lockdown, but because obviously there was some horrendous things that happened in the world, but there were sort of things that everybody shared, wasn't there, during that time, that, it's kind of a collective experience, which is unusual to have these days when everybody's we don't watch the same TV channels, we don't watch the same, we don't all read the same book. Media is so massive, but we all kind of did similar things to the people in this film, other than possibly the seance. I did, and that's when I changed my role. This is really strange. I changed my role. I started working predominantly online. Also watching football games with my friends online, or watching bad movies online, but it changed. It was something where I was like, I could see myself doing this a little bit more for work. I'll get it out there. I've seen this 3 times. I bought this version after watching it on Shudder a couple of times, and maybe downloaded it the first time. But the weird thing was the extra bit at the end this time. I don't know if you had this, where it showed a real seance that the director and the cast did. For me, that took me out of it a little bit, because when I first watched it, it just stops. It stayed with me for a little bit. Like the film kind of sat with me, and it felt very real. Like the meeting ended, you know, the Zoom ended. This time it went straight to another. It really stayed with me the first time, maybe because we were right in the middle of it. I think when I first watched it, my wife was sort of half watching it, and it definitely scared her. It scared me more than I thought it would as well. It's really well edited to make that happen. There's a real skill from the editor, because I was thinking, oh well, you know, there's no real cinematographer, it's all the vision of Rob Savage, but I was thinking that the editor had a lot of work to do to make all that work, from all the different elements and making sure we were on the right person at the right time. It was probably a little bit more methodical, person to person, from screen to screen, how it all looked, to make it look as realistic as possible. The budget, I couldn't find how much the budget was. I just read somewhere a lot of it was just the goodwill of friends. So a lot more's gone into it than maybe. I mean, I suppose that's what makes it so good, is that it looks like that anyone could do it, but you really they couldn't. That balance of realism really works, and I suppose that is a relatively small budget for what it is. I think it was Shudder that paid for it directly. So like they have they'll have things like I think they have like a lighting consultant and cast and crew to pay and things like that. So yeah, it was pleasantly surprised. It was, like I say, we're watching it when that wasn't over and we were still kind of in and out of those lockdowns. Made it feel like in a strange way, a nice collective experience, like somebody had done something creative to occupy their time and I was sharing in it. That's why, because my wife will never watch horror films with me, but she was kind of drawn in by it. I think as well, you know, mainly female characters, quite relatable, quite normal. I suppose I'd say they came across as like sort of middle upper class people, but still like a group of mates from uni, essentially. Well, probably uni with it, the American girl being there. Probably they met her at uni or something. I think that's why it's so good that like Rob Savage is getting opportunities with bigger films now as well, because like it's great for sort of smaller British filmmakers making short films, and because he's just got his chance now because of creativity. I mean, the thing is, you'll do something like that, you make a really creative film, and then they'll give you a Marvel film, and you have to make a Marvel film, and it's exactly the same as the other Marvel films, otherwise everybody hates it. Strangely, other than this, and I don't know why, maybe just the idea of this being a Zoom call or sort of the creativity, that none of those really interested me enough for me to want to see them. I think I've seen the trailer for maybe some Unfriended, or there's certainly one, is it where John Cho is looking for his daughter, but again I haven't got round to watching those. I'm not sure whether I would even like going back to sort of holding cameras on shoulders and doing like Blair Witch Project kind of thing. I'm not like a massive fan of that. Like I would prefer this over the Blair Witch Project. Actually, the sound design, like the scrapes of the chairs and the sick bang sounds and bumps, Teddy's music box, like that's your sound design. Really sparse, but really well done. It's so realistic, you just kind of go with it like you're watching. Like you wouldn't sit and critique somebody's Zoom call, would you, and be like, oh, just love what they've done with that bookcase. I had to really, I suppose maybe watching it, say the third time, made that a bit easier, because I could kind of not focus on the story as much because I could remember it, and just kind of focus on the things that maybe I hadn't noticed the other times. It's funny because it takes it back to a specific point. You know, when Hayley's like just about to go online right at the beginning, she's fluffing her hair up and kind of just getting prepared for the meeting. I thought it was quite funny. Like things that place it to the first lockdown, and like, you know, she talking to the dad, one of the dads about not going outside the house, and just kind of working stuff out in the same sort of way. I thought it was really good. That that actually brought some of the humour of it. There's not a lot of humour in the film. This is quite different. I'm quite proud of myself for for even watching, for sitting down and watching it, and I'm pleased that I liked it. And in a way, it's opened my mind to the possibility of other sort of modern films being good. Obviously, I've proven you don't have to be a found footage fan. If you have some nostalgia for the pandemic, no, if you have like some sort of, you want to see what it really captures the zeitgeist of that particular time in the pandemic. It's accessible, but it is scary. There is some genuinely scary moments that make you feel like you're kind of in there and trapped in there. Really drags you into the situation. Realism, for me as well, like there's always that fear that some of the things actually are real, that the filmmakers have gone too far, you know, like, and then you go down a slippery slope of watching films that are just horrendous and have no real or very little artistic value, I guess, or I don't know. People could argue that they do. Yeah, there's quite a lot of stunt. There's quite a lot of people in the stunt like team checking all the things and how they did that during the pandemic. I don't know, like how they were kind of not in physical contact, but there and setting things up and probably dropping things off at people's doors and then telling them how to use the things, setting it all up. I suppose you could still keep a distance if you're pulling a chair on a rope or something, but wow, yeah, it's really creative, and incredibly inventive and creative beyond all the restrictions that they had. So I think that's I think that's really smart. I think that's the sign of a really good creator, like, is that you can do that within these things. It's funny, they're very good at creating character though, aren't they? From very little, like, you know that she's rich because they're bitching about her. They know she's got a nice massive house, that they're always on Instagram, her and Teddy, loads of pictures of them on Instagram, and like never on his own, and because he's obviously part of their little clique, that they kind of resent that a bit. So you get that about Ginny. We're taking on what they think about Ginny, really, aren't we? Yeah. We don't really know Ginny, and even the way they interact with each other, you get little clues to their dynamic and friendship group. It's really well done. They're typical like uni students having their own little in jokes and not wanting and being very like they've got their little core group and they don't want anybody in there to kind of, or if they do, they're just there as kind of like to, like you say, to make fun of. So it makes you like them a little bit less, which allows us to accept some of the stuff that's going to happen to them. There's one bit that really stood out to me, which is only people in films have bowling balls in closets that fall out and make noise. Like, I've never seen that in any other life. You know, I've never heard of anybody in real life. That it's just always in movies. It's like, oh, it was just the bowling ball falling. That's probably one of the few horror tropes that's in this film. It's very inventive that you can let a spirit in via Zoom. Because essentially that's the premise, isn't it? It's like we've ended up inviting the spirit into all of these homes because if we were all in one place all together, this wouldn't be happening in the same way. They'd probably just get massacred really quickly. You downloaded a spirit through a seance. So good. I can imagine like a group of American students, okay guys, right, we're going to do this, and they're all, you know, and you might have the one jock. The UK one, the American person's taking it really seriously and all the others are just kind of either petrified or just wanted to take the mickey out of it and just being idiots. Again, there's mention like Insidious as well of the astral plane, isn't there? But with it being British, they just take the mickey out of it, and every time she says astral plane, they're going to have a drink. Do the moment before that as well, I think it's really good, where Hayley sneezes. That did genuinely scare me the first time. I was like, because they're all like, oh God, I can't believe you did that. And I was like, yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think that's completely unintentional. I think she just sneezed. I hate conflict, and I hate being in the middle of two people having an argument and being sat in the middle of it. So that for me is probably one of the scariest moments. And this is a perfect plot point. Like that, there's a reason for them to fall out. It's funny in a way, it's realistic, it's all of those things, but it's also necessary. So the sound engineering as well is quite good. I think the use of the zoom settings like cut off certain bits and put and make certain bits louder. Certainly when she was exploring the loft as well, that was good. And like there's quite good use of space and empty spaces when people disappear off doing the different things, whether it's going to the bathroom or whatever. Like, it's really inventive. Even the bit with the girl who, is it Caroline, does the thing where she's walking up and down. I've been fooled by that every time I watched it, and I was like, oh yeah, of course, this is like her background, essentially, like an animated background, really, isn't it? The humour comes from Gemma and Hayley, I think. I'm glad that Teddy's not in it a lot anyway, because I would say that he's probably most irritating character. Hayley takes the lead, doesn't she? She's an interesting character in it because being American, the dynamic is different with the sort of more UK people, like we said before, and then obviously Teddy's very different again. But you do believe that they're all close and they're all friends. That friendship group is really believable, which is sometimes one of the hardest things to do in a horror movie. It's just why are all these people friends? Is it just a case of like the faculty or something where they're all in detention together, or like, well, I suppose that's from the Breakfast Club, but like how have they kind of come together? And I believe that they were all maybe in the same halls together or something at uni. It's really grounded in something that seems real. Like, it doesn't look like there's like a movie star in the middle of it. She is a little bit useless at times, but they're all a little bit useless because this really weird thing is happening, and that's how you would deal with it. There have been different things that you could probably laugh about from an American point of view that people did culturally during the pandemic that might be very different to how the people in Britain handled it. There might be just little subtle things that maybe watching that film, Americans must be like, well, we didn't do that during the pandemic, or we didn't behave like that, or that wasn't. But then again, the rules were all slightly different, weren't they? And different places, like they probably did it like state by state. Every state was different, whereas ours was like, okay, Britain, you're doing this. Stay a certain distance away from the demon. This demon just not respect the British government's COVID rules. I just think it's an incredibly inventive film. Really recommend, if people haven't seen it, to go out and watch it, regardless of what sort of area of horror you like the most. Give it a go.